Okay, hi guys. So today I'm going to show you how to make a pocket cloth diaper. This is not one I made. This is a kawaii pocket diaper, but it's going to be similar to this. And there's lots of ways to make a pocket opening for a cloth diaper. But I'm going to show you what I find to be the easiest way to make a pocket diaper opening. I've tried numerous ways, but this I find is going to be the easiest, the least amount of steps. First, you're going to need a pattern. Then you're going to need some sort of micro fleece. And thirdly, you're going to need some PUL material, which is waterproof material, so that this does not need a cover. So you can stuff it and you're good to go. So first what you're going to do is you're going to take your pattern and you're going to cut that pattern out of your PUL. After you do that, you can add your snaps if you're going to do snaps. You would also add your Velcro at this point up at the top if you're going to do your Velcro. I'm going to skip showing you how to do this step for the sake of time because it is a little time consuming. But if you've never done snaps before, they're really easy. I always back mine with another small piece of PUL just so that they're supported, so that it doesn't break the PUL when you're using it. So my snaps are all in. After you cut this out and you have your snaps on, the next step is you're going to cut out your micro fleece pinion. So here's my pattern, and I would cut this out on the fold, but instead of just cutting one piece, I have marked my pattern. So I'm going to be cutting out first a piece on this line, and then I'm going to be cutting out a second piece from here to here. Oops, sorry. From here to here. And the first piece from here to there. So the point of these is that you want to make sure that they will overlap when they are sewn together against the PUL. So you want this part to overlap this and this part to overlap a little bit. And that's going to create your pocket. Okay, so the next two steps, this step isn't completely necessary, but it helps. I think it makes it look a little bit more professional, and I think it helps the usefulness of it. And you're going to cut out a strip that is the same size as your bottom part, and just a little bit shorter. So you can see this side right here, it's a little bit longer. You're just going to cut it out a little bit short to how long this part is. Otherwise, it's going to be the exact same size, length. And then you're going to sew this, and you're going to flip it, and you're going to sew right along here, right along the edge, so that when you flip it back out after it's sewn, it's going to look like that. And then also when you go over to your sewing machine, you're going to take this top part, and you're just going to fold it over and sew down. And you're going to take this top part, fold over, and sew down. Okay, so here I am at the sewing machine. I might hit this thing because it's kind of in my way, but this is the top part, and this is going to be that little lining in the front that I'm going to sew just right, very straight. So I'm going to go back just to tack it down. And then this is what it's going to look like after you've tacked it down. And then what you're going to do is you're going to flip the excess that you have of the fleece, and you're just going to flip them both so that they are parallel with each other, flush, and so that the seam back here is flush. And you're just going to do another seam, just tacking this down straight so that it lays flat. And this seam's going to show, so you want to make sure that it is pretty straight and consistent. Trim. So that's what that looks like after you tack that down in the front. And then what you're going to do, this excess fleece in the back, you're just going to trim it pretty close down to the seam. Okay, so now that you have sewn this part on, and you've hemmed this side, and you've hemmed this side, now you can attach these two back parts to the PUL. So you're going to lay down your PUL so that this side is facing you, and then you're going to take your first side and match it up. And you do want to start with this side because you want the higher part, which is this one, to be the part that you see when you flip it inside out. So you want to lay down this part first, up where your snaps or your Velcro is. And then after you have that part, you're just going to line this part up so that it matches. And then go ahead and pin all the way around to get ready to sew it down. So now that it's all pinned and ready to sew, just sew along, taking out the pins as you go, all the way around the diaper. I'm not going to show you this part because it's pretty self-explanatory. So just do that, then we'll come back and I will show you the next step, the back. So go ahead and mark your area on your diaper for where your elastic should be. And I'm going to be using a disappearing ink pen specifically for sewing projects. And if you don't have one of these and you sew a lot, I would really recommend it. It's really nice. So we're just going to mark it there, there. And so I know that they're exactly even. I fold my diaper and just find it in the second point. Do the same thing at both other ends. Okay. So now that I have marked where my elastic is, I'm going to measure my elastic out, making sure to leave a little extra room for when you sew it in for your seam allowance. And then I take this and I fold it in half, and then I'm just going to cut. I'm going to find that midpoint and cut that. So those are my two leg elastics. And I'm going to do the same thing for the back. Find my midpoint and cut. And those are my two areas that I need elastic. And then I'm going to bring you over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to show you how to sew on elastic. So we're back at the sewing machine, and I'm going to start to show you the top area of the elastic. So here is the top of the diaper. I don't know if you can tell, but here's my first notation on where my elastic should be sewn in. And I'm just going to go a little bit past that. And on the seam allowance, I'm going to sew down my elastic. Make sure that not to go over your actual seam that you already had sewn down. I'm just going to go over it a couple times, because if you go over this seam right here, you're going to see it on the other side when you flip your diaper right side out. Okay, so just going to sew that down a couple times so it's not going anywhere. And then here's this side. You're just going to kind of pull it over. Here is my other notation. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other end. Just a couple times to secure it and trim. So we're back, and the elastic has been sewn down on either side like that in the seam allowance. And that. See that? And at this point, you're going to flip the diaper right side out. Take your diaper, and you're going to stitch on the outside all the way around the diaper. And what this does is two things. One, it creates a kind of like a binding for the outside of the diaper so that it doesn't pucker funny, so that everything kind of works as one. And the other thing it's going to do is it's going to case in your elastic. So while you're doing this on the other parts, once we get to the elastic, you're going to encase it. And all that means is, you know, say you're sewing, and then you get to your elastic and you're just going to jog over, and instead of sewing over the elastic, you're going to sew right under the elastic, and it's going to make this little pocket where the elastic can kind of move in. So I'm going to take you back over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to show you how to do that. If you want, you can pin everything before you get to the sewing machine. I'm not going to do that. I don't like to do that. I think it's kind of hard to pin these when they're all kind of mushed up with the elastic in there. So I'm not going to do it, but if you would like to, do that right now before you go over to the sewing machine. Okay. So I'm going to start sewing in this upper corner where one of the flaps is, because most likely you're not going to see that as much. as if you started in the front, and you would see kind of that seam. I like to sew on the inside of the diaper where the fleece is, and the only reason I like this is it's my preference, but I find that the PUL tends to roll in so that the fleece isn't rolling out, so you don't get wicking on clothing. I find that when you sew with the PUL facing you, the fleece is what rolls out, and you don't really want that. Alright, so I'm just going to start sewing around. Alright, so I've gotten to my first area that has elastic in it, and I'm going to stop short of it and kind of pull this side and then grab it so it's all flush against the corner, and then I'm just going to jog around it, and just make sure that your needle's down when you pull, otherwise it's going to pull the whole thing and then you're going to be all messed up. So as you can see, I'm not on the elastic, I'm around the elastic. Pulling more and holding. And here's the end of my elastic. I'm just gonna make my way back in, and then I can proceed as usual. Making sure that everything's pushed out all the way as I go. Kind of feeling where my elastic is because it butted up to this part, so I couldn't tell if that was my elastic or just a seam, but it's right here where these two meet. Okay. So here I am in my elastic again. Okay, make sure your needle's down. And just pull again. Go slow, because it's a real pain if you go over your elastic. You have to take out the seam. Unless you just don't care and, you know, you kind of end up with a little wonky leg, but the functionality really suffers if you go over the elastic and don't fix it. Back up. And then just kind of lift up your press foot for your corner turn. the only part that is left is to put on the snaps on the wings. And you're just going to use your pattern piece and put your snaps on. Alright you guys, there is the finished diaper. It gets super little, and mine was a one size diaper, so here's it in the smallest setting. And I'm going to show you how big it gets. It's not the biggest diaper, but I kind of made it in between, you know, a normal kind of one size diaper and one that could kind of fit a newborn, an actual one size diaper that could fit a newborn. And that's how big it gets. And I'll include some handmade hemp inserts as well. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it.